So Carolyn has written 2 books, and the thing I love about these books is simply this. It's a fictional approach that focuses on winning the battle. So we talk about attracting our young people. Our young people nowadays aren't so fascinated by politics or even nonfiction, right? They want to go into their own utopia or their fantasy world. And she's approaching the culture where they're at. And so with that, I'm going to give Carolyn a little bit of time to talk to you about what it is that she's created and the impact that she would like to have through this. So with that, will you please welcome Carolyn Hanchett?
Well, I have this too, so I don't, can you hear me? Okay. I have been so excited to come and do this presentation, except for the fact that I am breaking 2 of the most critical laws in public speaking. Number 1 is that you're never supposed to write out your speech. You're supposed to write a few key words on a card, ad lib. Well, my days for doing that are long gone, because not only am I having memory lapses, well, you could say memory challenge because of my age, and maybe some of you could identify with that, but also because I had a severe brain concussion from an automobile accident. So sometimes my brain works, sometimes my brain doesn't work. Whence the notes, in case there's a time tonight when it doesn't work. Now I've just broken the other rule of public speaking by this disclaimer. Let's see now, where was I? Oh, just kidding. Before getting into the insights of the books, I want to share the impetus for writing them. My first memory of the American flag happened when I was 5 years old. And I vividly remember it because as I stood there with my little hand over my heart, as the flag went by at the 4th of July parade, I was overwhelmed with this warm, tingling sensation that just surged through my whole body. And even though I didn't understand why, I knew it was special. In my teens, I came to understand, however, its symbolism and the importance of living in a free country. So while my friends were fantasizing about being Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor and the fame and fortune that it brings, my fantasy was to be a Joan of Arc, straddling a beautiful stallion, or it could have been a horse, with a lance, or a Jordana in the movie Exodus on foot with a rifle slung over her shoulders, defending my country as they did theirs. And I have to say, I truly am bummed because I missed the opportunity to fulfill part of each of those fantasies by not joining the Bundys in their fight against our enemies. But then, with my luck, I would have probably fallen off the horse, misfired my rifle, started a bloodbath, and so maybe not a good idea. Oh, and besides that, actually, since it is said the pen can be mightier than the sword, well, except in the case of the Bundy Ranch, I decided to fight my country through the written word. Part of my intent was to inform in an entertaining way, as Shane pointed out, the threats to our country and our freedoms, not just from Muslim extremists, socialists, or communists, but those inside our country and out, who look at America as the enemy of a global utopian society. And even though they advocate freedom from poverty, global warming, war, they are as dangerous to this nation as any jihadist threat. Because as long as men have the propensity for evil and greed and power, a utopian world is not possible. And we are left to be subjugated and in bondage to people who believe we have no greater value than pigs who run in their own waste and eat garbage. And there are movements known as the Declaration of Interdependence, a parody on our Declaration of Independence. Secular humanism, UN Agenda 21, which, by the way, I wrote about in my book before Glenn Beck ever talked about it on his show, and I'm thinking, kudos for me. The desires of all these movements are to order our lives and country according to their, not God's, designs of how the world should be. And they are having great success because they appeal to the masses, because they disguise their motives in altruistic language. After all, who wants to argue and fight against intolerance, war, poverty, hunger, dirty air, water, abuses of nature, etc.? But when trying to eliminate these things results in suppressing the free agency of man and nations in a mandated way of life and beliefs, no matter whether their motives are altruistic, naively altruistic, or for power, we must fight, not against the premise, but against the methods. We must change men's hearts and minds, not rule them. I have hoped to do so through the characters of the books. The conservative Abigail Houston, a future investigative journalist who makes waves at her university by submitting a report on God's miraculous role in the founding of America, and elicits the wrath of America's enemies by exposing their insidious designs through her blogs, which not only jeopardizes her life, but also strains her relationship with the man she loves in spite of his liberal leanings and politics, Elijah Morningstar. A three-quarter Cherokee being groomed for the U.S. congressional seat by the left-leaning Democratic Party in North Carolina. That is until Abby's blog and his own experiences convinced him of the error of his thinking. Elijah then takes up the battle in Book 2 and blogs about the threats to America by Islamic jihadists, evolution as Darwin defines it, and turning our backs on God and his commandments. Even though Elijah was aware of God's protection in the founding of this nation, it was through his conversion to Christianity and an in-depth study of the Bible, together with the writings of the founding fathers and others, that he came to believe that if, like ancient Israel, America is to be protected against her complete annihilation as a free nation, and knowing Israel's protection came only when the majority obeyed his will, that we must do the same. Because of Elijah and Abby's because of their fight, their lives become a living nightmare as they make inroads into Satan's and the progressive destructive designs for America. The books have been endorsed from a young mom, an avid reader, to an internationally recognized physicist, to an author and guest host on Glenn Beck's show, who I tried, by the way, for over a year to get him to read the book. Finally, to get me off his back, he did. But he told me afterwards that he didn't expect to like it because he only reads nonfiction. But I'm thinking it's probably because there's a girl on the cover. This is a quote from his 2-page review. I must admit, I'm not a big fan of fiction, so when I lay down in bed with the blog at about 9:30 p.m., one night I was not expecting to still be awake by 9:45. At 2 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting up, my eyes wide open, and fixed on this powerful and gripping story told so well by Hanchet. The moral of the story is you should never judge a book by its cover. Because of its content, I felt my target audience should be university-age students to adults, but after a couple of experiences that I had with younger readers, I changed my mind. The first experience was a 17-year-old girl who had come, and she had read the blog, and she had come to our home for a concert practice. And I answered the door for her, and this is how she greeted me. "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh." And I'm thinking, what? Is my hair falling out? What? Then she proceeded to tell me how much she loved the book. In fact, she loved it so much, she went in her room and didn't put it down until she was finished. And she subsequently has told me that she's read it again. The next was at a 3-day fair where the first night my poster caught the eye of a young man, a young boy actually, as he walked by with his mother. After reading the poster and perusing the book, he said to his mother, "This looks really interesting. I think I want to get it." Well, I could tell by the sour look on her face, she knew it was going to be a waste of money. I'm thinking of all the reasons why he's not going to like the book. He's a teenager. He's not going to be enthralled by the political or the historical aspects of the book. Plus, judging his apparel, my little old lady brain is screaming, Satan worshiper. So I was pretty sure that he wasn't going to be into the reference of God either. And even though I wrote the books to fight for my country, they were also a means for much needed income. So he decided he wanted to buy the book, and his mother wasn't going to pay for it. So he takes money out of his billfold, and he pays for it. And because I'm needing the income, I take it. He walks away happily with the book. I'm left feeling really guilty. But the next night, much to my surprise, he returns, looking like he could have been the poster child for wholesome looks, instead of a pawn for Satan. He told me that his family was waiting for him, but he had to come and tell me how much he loved the book. And he disappeared into the crowd. And the moral of that story is you can't judge a book by its cover. And even those in their teens can be touched and inspired by truths and should be awakened to that which affects their future. The books are not only a voice of warning, but also a voice of hope. Because with God's help and valiant contributions by its patriots who desire to serve Him, America will rise to be an even greater land of promise, never again to be destroyed by evil designing men or women, or by the wickedness of her people. I would like to end by reading a few excerpts from Abby's blog. She begins the first one with this. For many years, the Statue of Liberty stood as a light and a beacon to the world, her torch beckoning the downtrodden, the hopeless, those longing to be free. And many, through their entrepreneurial endeavors, hard work, and sacrifices, realized unbelievable dreams. Their varied ethnic talents and contributions created a colorful tapestry that added richness and variety to this new land of promise. Sadly, of course, not everyone realized the American dream. And yes, there were those who were forced into servitude for too many years. But in spite of this, the Lady of Freedom still stood proud and tall, her torch held upward, ever calling to those who saw America as the land of opportunity. But a dark cloud overshadows her now, and the image haunts my mind as I see her struggle to continue to be that light. I see the torch once held high, lying at her feet. I see cracks like veins weakening her as she struggles not to fall at the hands of evil men. I see her tear-stained eyes darkened and pleading, her cries for help echo in my ears, because too many are willing to give up freedoms that she and the Constitution promise. And this from her blog on Advocates of One World Government. And these quotes that I'm giving you, Abby adds her own little take on them. And as I'm writing them, I'm thinking they're really funny and I'm giggling. So even if you don't think they're funny, giggle and laugh anyway just to make me feel better. In the next century, nations as we know it will be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority. National sovereignty wasn't such a great idea after all. Strobe Talbot, President Clinton's Deputy Secretary of State, as quoted in Times, July 1992. Abby adds, the problem is, Talbot, if it wasn't for American sovereignty, you wouldn't have had the great privilege of serving the man whose best known line is, it depends on what the definition of is. And three of the many unbelievable quotes from her last blog. Human beings as a species have no more value than slugs. John Davis, editor of Earth First. And Abby adds, Where do these people come from? Oh yeah, slaves. Cannibalism is a radical but realistic solution to the problem of overpopulation. Lyle Boxer, The Financial Times, July 15, 1995. Abby adds, I don't even know where to begin with this one. Oh, I know. How about, have you had your food today? Abby ends her last blog with a quote from a sane and admirable person. I earnestly pray that the omnipotent being who had not deserted the cause of America in the hour of its extremest hazard will never yield so fair a heritage of freedom a prey to anarchy or despotism. George Washington. Abby adds, I pledge my heart, my mind, my life to the heritage you left me. President Washington. As I come to these meetings, I have felt a sadness as I see that mostly the patriots, including myself, won't be here in a few years, and I'm glad that Shane knows too. We must reach out to the rising generation to take our place. That these seats might one day be filled to capacity with younger patriots to hear the greatest defender of our freedoms, Shane Krauser, who I extend a deep sense of gratitude for allowing me this opportunity and for wanting to promote the books. Thank you, Shane. And thank you.